Hello and welcome to another episode of our new Haematology podcast series, Hema Now, with me, your host, Dr. Jonathan Sakia. This series was designed to spotlight the leading experts in all subspecialties of haematology, and today I'm delighted to be joined by one of our own beloved editorial board members, Dr. David Gómez-Almaguer. Our guest earned his medical degree from the University of Nuevo León in Monterrey, Mexico, and received specialized training in hematology and internal medicine at the prestigious Instituto Nacional de Nutrición y Ciencias Médicas Salvador Zubirán in Mexico City, my best Spanish. Currently, he serves as the head of the Haematology Service at the University Hospital in Monterrey and is the director of the Stem Cell Transplantation Program. Beyond his remarkable professional achievements, David's also an avid tennis player, a bassist in a rock band, and a history enthusiast. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. David Gómez-Almaguer. It's a pleasure to have you.
So, David, it's good to be with you. I can't start this episode without inquiring about your rock band. I'm a major music aficionado, and my guitar teacher told me when I was a kid that it would be a service to humanity if I put the instrument down and never picked it up again. So tell me, how did you get into it, and what kind of rock did you play?
Well, when I was in the faculty in the first years, I was 17 years old. I started to play guitar, bass guitar. And then, at that time, we were just following the music of that time, Beatles, Rolling Stones, Creedence Clearwater, and later on Chicago and so on. That's we just play covers and once in a while an original song, but it was just for fun. We used to play in parties, weddings, etc. Some concerts for several years, and when I went to my residence, my fellowship, I stopped, and I went back a few years ago just for fun, for hobby with my old friends, and that's it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, there are many, there's a lovely synergy between music and medicine. And I have a lot of friends in different fields of medicine who are also musicians. There's a very distinguished surgeon here in Britain, and during the day, he's very prim and proper, buttoned down. And at night, he plays lead guitar and vocals in a punk rock band. So it's a lovely, lovely double life. So hematology's blossomed during your professional lifetime, my professional lifetime. What initially drew you to the field?
Well, was easy because my father was a hematologist, and all the time it was comments in the table around medicine and blood diseases. But when I start, it seems to me that was somehow easy to have at least diagnosis looking at a blood smear, and that's why I uh, convinced me that was a good point, a good idea to be a hematologist, to become a hematologist, because in the 70s, medicine was not so technological that like now. Diagnosis was not easy to perform, and in blood diseases, just with the lab and a blood smear, you can make a lot of diagnosis rapidly. That's why I became more attractive to hematology.
It's one of those specialties, isn't it, where you get to see everything. You get involved in uh, the critical elements of the diagnosis, looking at the blood smear, obviously evaluating the patient, and then treating the patient and following them for a long time. So, talk to us about the Stem Cell Transplantation Institution being recognized by FACT, and please address the growth of cellular therapies in hematology, because it's exploded.
Yeah, yeah. We here have one of the biggest programs in Latin America, and it was only a few have the accreditation of FACT and JC FACT, and that's important for us. We're happy to have a unit with good quality and good results for a patient.
So, what sort of things, what sort of areas is it being used for? Cellular therapies being used for stem cell?
We're treating patients with several diseases, so mostly neoplastic, like leukemia, lymphoma, myeloma, plastic anemia, and also autoimmune disease like multiple sclerosis. That's our field that we are working on.
For multiple sclerosis.
Oh yes, in fact, we have transplanted several patients from England because in many countries there is no really is not approved this kind of therapy. It's considered experimental, but in our world is transplant for multiple sclerosis considered the best therapy available.
Right. And is it
So
available in the
we perform a lot of patients,
is it available in the United States for MS?
and yeah, it's available, but it's not covered by insurance.
Right. Right.
So we transplant a lot of patients from the United States also.
It's
And
fascinating.
yeah.
And I was recently reading about some work about natural killer cells for myeloma. And that's auto transplantation, effectively taking the patient's own cells, expanding them, and re injecting them. What's the state of
Well,
play?
this is maybe what you are trying to say is about CAR T cells,
Yeah.
the also NK cells. But this is just is nowadays approved in United States. But I think that in Europe and other parts of the world are not as frequent as United States. And in our hands, we're just trying to get approval from the authorities. We already have got many of the job, but many yes, I have covered many issues in order to get the authorization. But still, we are waiting for that. And I assume that next year we'll be ready to treat patients with leukemia, myeloma, and lymphoma with CAR T cells.
Right. Mhm. So you list several foci of clinical interest, including aplastic anemia, chronic lymphocytic leukemia, myelodysplastic syndrome. For each of those three, can you please give us one example of how new therapeutic modalities are impacting lifespan and health span for these patients?
Um, well, transplant is trying be to cure patients, but in the case of myeloma, it's just to get more time free of other drugs and free of symptoms. It's just to improve quality of life in the case of myeloma. But in leukemia and lymphoma, we try to cure the patient with these procedures.
Right. And for aplastic anemia,
Oh yeah, of course. Aplastic anemia is the best therapy available for young patients. Like talking about 50, 55 years and below. Is that we are trying to transplant patient with aplastic anemia. It's not so frequent like lymphoma, myeloma, leukemia, but we have we have done this job and we have published papers about it.
right. So I know that from the time I qualified to now, the treatment of diseases like CLL, myelodysplastic syndrome, the treatments have, there are multiple options. What's the most recent developments in other than stem cell transplantation or
Well, it depends on the disease. And in myelodysplastic syndrome, there is not really a big advance. The transplant is the only curative option, and there are several treatments in order to improve the quality of patients and and also to avoid transfusions. But the reality is that the only curative treatment for dysplasia is the transplant. In the case of CLL, there are several treatments, and transplant is now uh, very rarely we have to we could do that. I used to perform transplants in the past for those patients, but now we have several treatments, target therapies like that we call drugs directed to the Bruton tyrosine kinase, like ibrutinib and zanubrutinib or others, acalabrutinib. There are several. Venetoclax is against the BCL2 gene. So this kind of therapy is now fantastic, and we can do it and avoid any other therapy for many years. There are also now CAR T cells for CLL, but it's very infrequent. Very rarely we have to use that kind of extreme therapy.
Right, because there's a choice of drugs. So you have some publications this year addressing the phase 3 trial of ponatinib versus imatinib in patients with Philadelphia positive acute lymphoblastic
That's
leukemia
right.
anemia, or the Falcon trial. Can you summarize the findings from that, please?
Well, Tico, was it was as expected. Imatinib is a nice drug, but it's just the first drug for LGC or CGL, and for acute lymphoblastic leukemia pH positive. So ponatinib is tier, the group 3 drugs, or the third line of drugs. In the first is imatinib, second line is nilotinib, dasatinib, bosutinib, and number 3 is ponatinib and asciminib. And ponatinib is a very important drug. Is very, how you say, potent. It's very effective, and the collateral damage is not so big. The results, in summary, is that this is the best therapy available maybe right now, and we obtain a molecular response in almost double that imatinib, and also advantage in survival and disease-free survival. So we confirm that this is maybe the best therapy available right now. The combination of ponatinib with some 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 chemotherapy is maybe the best option that we have now. And we collaborate with people from the MD Anderson, doctors in Spain and England, etc.
Okay, good. So, David, I remember the early days of cord blood donation holding lots of promise. Can you provide a state of the art on where it's being used and what the future might hold? And you contributed to a recent paper, Impact of Race and Ethnicity on Outcomes After Umbilical Cord Transplantation. Can you please tell us what was found there?
Well, nowadays, this is not very common. It used to be very or somehow useful in the old days, when the haploidentical transplant was not available. But nowadays that we have haploidentical, and also donors registered in several, how you say, countries, that they have a donor list for marrow. So the use of cord blood is going down. And the reason is that results are not so bad, but it takes much time to recover. And that costs a lot of money. And also it costs money to get the cord blood units. And the third reason is that in adults, the amount of cells that you need is higher. So you will need 2 or 3 cords, uh, three, 2 or 3 units of cords in order to obtain your number of cells that you require to be successful in a transplant. Therefore, we cancel in my unit the use of cord blood, and we are now, we change to a identical. It's easy to get the cells of a brother 50% compatible, or a son 50%, or father to son, or mother to son, or daughter 50% compatible. It's very easy, very rare not to get a donor. So that's the way we are doing things. A identical is now number one transplant in the allogeneic area of our unit. In fact, is the number one against autologous and allogeneic. Okay, and the cord blood is from several years is none, zero. So the expectations of cord blood, unless we obtain another way to use it, the cells, is not very good. In the future, you can get these cells in order to produce, for example, allogeneic RT or other kind of cells. Uh, so we could change our vision right now, but nowadays in many parts of the world, cord blood is going down, and in our hands in Mexico now it's very rare to use cord blood. Okay,
Okay.
I don't know that gives you the old picture.
Sure, but this paper that you wrote, race and ethnicity on outcome.
Ah, okay, yes. Well, this is just the record, uh, just a register, and it's not is it not deals in how we are doing things right now. Okay, it's just deal with the what kind of people is giving the blood to the bank, and how it's not easy to get cells from underprivileged uh, people. All right, but this is not really in the direction of the cord blood results or cord blood utilization. It's just describing the racial issues in donation of cord blood.
Sure. Okay. So, David, one of the biggest thrills of my career has been visiting different countries. I've been privileged to include Mexico on that list. I used to operate in Tijuana when I was living and working in San Diego, and I've been to Mexico City a number of occasions. I've got very fond memories of your country. Certainly, the food and the celebrations. Mexicans know how to party, I think I would say. Um, but every country is facing constrained resources in one way or another. Everyone's got access to care issues. And your field, whilst it has advanced dramatically, those advances are expensive.
Yeah.
How do you reconcile access to care at a time when budgets are constrained, people are dealing with poverty, under resources? How do you deal with that?
Well, we have a very creative group of people, all several, more than 10 people in research here. And I used to say we have to provide the best therapy available, but the less costly at the same time. So we have used these ideas all the time in order to provide therapy and not to increase the cost. For example, we have our transplant unit is devoted to created like outpatient unit. So we perform all our autologous transplantation out of the hospital in 90%. Allogeneic identical 50% or never spend a night in the hospital. And identical is more complex situation, but still 20%, 25 never sleep in the hospital. Therefore, the cost is low, and the use of hospital that is costly is reduced. The identical this is more complex, but still they spend a median of 10 days in the hospital only, not the usually 30 to 40 in a normal unit. This is one good way we have done things. And the other is that we have take advantage of the low dose of many drugs that you don't need to use in the maximal dose, because maximal dose is the higher doses are not really that what the patient needs. And the combination of some cheap drugs like itraconazole, for example, with venetoclax, increase the dose of venetoclax and the effectivity. We don't lose effectivity. And we have published several papers using low dose of several drugs, and we have published how to use and how not to lose effectivity. And of course, the cost is half or less than half. The other, recently, we published a paper very recently, as a month ago, a few days ago, that we don't need to the irradiate the blood because several years ago, more than 20, the idea that you have to irradiate the blood in order to avoid complications was important. But we stopped that and we changed to filters. And we published the second paper of the field showing that we don't need to irradiate blood. In fact, the guidelines of the British Society of Hematology mention one of our papers suggesting that we don't have to do that. And they published also a paper where almost 1,000 patients were transfused by mistake with blood without irradiation in England, and they show that there were not really any complication. So this is we avoid to get that expensive machine, and also we avoid the cost of irradiate the blood. So in in summary, I have to say that we have any many ideas how to treat patients without high costs. But or as I said, we are looking for the best therapy to less costly and less costly. Is that possible? And we are uh, in that way. In fact, our CAR-T says that in the United States will cost about around $400,000, and between 400 and 500,000 will cost in our hands about $30 to $40,000. Uh,
Wow.
so because we will develop the CAR cells in our lab. Right now, we have all the equipment, and we have been trained by people from Germany. Miltenji is the company, and they confirmed that we are ready to go. They confirmed that we are capable to produce CAR T cells, but we're waiting for the permission of the Mexican government, health authorities. This all pain in the where.
I'm not going to react to that, but other than to say, I did a lot of colorectal surgery, so I'm very familiar with that
Yeah,
anatomy in those
yeah.
individuals.
It's I think in all the countries, politics and medicine are a complicated issue.
It always is, but if we ruled the world, David, things would be different, right? So, what developments in diagnosis or treatment are at or just over the horizon in hematology that have you most excited? So, not things that are in wide use at the moment, but that you guys are talking about at your conferences and in the literature. What are the one or two things that get you excited?
Well, all the molecular issue, the molecular, the to to study a cell and in its special particular properties, that's amazing. And we can now uh, be certain that as so leukemia has some kind of um, uh, like I say translocation and chimera of genes, and that's amazing. For example, we can we can now be very certain that we are facing a promyelocytic leukemia, looking at the PML-RAR gene that is unique for this kind of leukemia, and that give us 100% uh, 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 security of that we are facing this kind of leukemia, and we are taking advantage of this to provide the best therapy. That's one example. And flow cytometry is amazing. Nowadays, we are not using too much the morphology. We are using just for the fast diagnosis, but cytometries for all our patients, and there are now protocols, very special protocols that are very. It's amazing how they can tell us you are facing this, you are facing this kind of leukemia, and of course we are taking advantage of that. I think that the cellular diagnosis uh, with antigens, uh, genes, and chromosomes is the most, I think, amazing. Nowadays, the NGS, how you say, new generation sequenciation or something like that. Sorry, my English is not so perfect.
Your English is extremely good and much better than my Spanish.
Oh, yes, I believe that. So that's the that kind of stuff is amazing. That's what of course, the PET scan is also changing the way we treat patients with especially with Hodgkin lymphoma and other cancers. That's amazing. That's is very is nowadays is easy to practice in hematology if you have the resources, the technical resources, and it's more fun because you are feel with more, how you say, like Superman,
Yes.
and without kryptonite,
Yes.
and you
Yeah.
can cure patients. And that's why I'm not happy to retire, because nowadays it's more easy to be a hematologist than the old days.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Much better for the patients, obviously.
yeah.
Well,
More people smiling and saying thanks, and you feel comfortable with that.
yeah.
Right? It's nice. It's still still we have to do much more work. Still, it's complicated hematology, but are different times now.
Yeah, very much so. Well, being a bit fanciful for my last question, David, I always like to ask people if you came across a magical genie and you had three wishes to improve hematology, what might those wishes be?
Well, I think the number one is accessibility for everybody. Is to me- diagnostic tests and to treatment, drugs. That's when will be the almost the only one, but this is the number one. The second, I could say, that's the how to cure people without chemotherapy. That's this isn't we're in the way, but will be the second. How to cure people without losing the hairs and without hospitals, etc. That will be the number two. And number three is we need more, how you say, target therapy. Target therapy is marvelous. And we will, I would like to have more of this in several diseases that we are not, like the example of chronic granulocytic leukemia with imatinib. That's a marvelous thing. We can get more of this. I'm very happy.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
those are three great wishes. I'm afraid that's all we've got time for today. I'd like to thank you for being with us on another episode of Hema Now. It was a real pleasure speaking with you, Dr. David, I'm sorry, Gómez-Almaguer. I try
Yeah.
and keep my pronunciation.
Thank you for the invitation, and nice talking with you. And I apologize for some, English mistake they could commit.
No, no mistakes at all. My father had a lovely expression. He said, Jonathan, if someone speaks to you and they have an accent, they speak one more language than you do. So no worries.
So, folks, thanks for listening to this episode of Hema Now. If you've enjoyed listening, and I guess if you're watching this part, you definitely have, please subscribe on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts so that you never miss an episode. And check out our archives. There's going to be lots of great episodes in there. And please tell your colleagues, tell your friends, like us on social media. You know the drill. So until next time, please stay safe, stay well, stay curious. Bye for now.